Last week for our sermon, it was a little bit different than it often is. We had 142 questions that we asked of the text. We had this beautiful text to the woman with the alabaster jar who comes and sits at the feet of Jesus and washes his feet in ointment and dries the feet with her hair. And it's beautiful and intimate and confusing and mysterious, and so rather than answer all your questions, we just asked more. And it might seem on the face of it kind of like an exercise in being gimmicky, but that's not at all what I intended it to be. Instead, I believe that is the best practice for going at our scriptural texts. More often than not, they evoke more questions than answers. We describe them as the living word, because you read that story now, and it means one thing to you, and then you read the story again a year later, and it means something completely different. So when you have a story like we did for today, with demons and pigs and Jesus being kicked out of a land, you should have a lot of questions. But I want to take a soft entry to this sermon. I want to show you a prank that was done promoting a movie, a horror movie, a remake of a horror movie called Carrie. And this movie has this woman who has these telekinetic powers, and so they decided to create a coffee shop where Carrie would kind of come out. So you'll see it. The music is a little dramatic, but you get the point.
I'm sorry.
You just ruined all of my stuff.
Get some napkins and clean it up, it'll be fine.
Fine, there's coffee in... Just get away from me! Just get away from me! Just get away from me!
Okay, so you get the idea. So when we think of this story of Jesus and the pigs and the demons, this is kind of the imagery that comes to mind, is like scary bat creatures from hell who scream with like chalkboard-like frequencies. If there's one thing I could ever teach you beyond the idea that God is love, it's that Scripture is incredibly beautiful metaphor. It is metaphor, metaphor, metaphor. When you think of the garden, or you think of the Tower of Babel, or you think of Noah's Ark, or you think of Jesus and the pigs and drowning in the sea, it is metaphor. So let that be our starting place. And with that, let's be a little bit playful with this text. First thing I want to do is talk about some context. This might open up some ideas about the text. If you were listening to this text in the first century, when it first kind of bubbled up, you would have recognized some really prominent themes that would have been in this story. First, Jesus gets in a boat and he sails across the Sea of Galilee. Now, when you sail across the Sea of Galilee, you are going to Gentile land. The people who were in that land were seen as unclean. The whole place was seen as unclean. So Jesus goes to this unclean place, and he encounters this unclean person. And he's unclean. First of all, he's naked. Second of all, he's been living in the tombs, which are seen as an unclean place. And it is said in the story that he is full of unclean spirits. And then Jesus takes the unclean spirits and he puts them in a herd of unclean animals. And then the unclean animals run off the cliff. So if you're listening to this story, you see this incredible transformation the moment Jesus steps off the boat. Gets off the boat, encounters a man who's been made clean. He sees unclean animals and he gets rid of them, along with the unclean spirits. That's interesting metaphor. The closest I can come up with for similarity is this. Jesus gets on a boat, he sails across the sea, and he goes to a needle exchange clinic. Or Jesus gets on a boat, sails across the Sea of Galilee, and walks into a strip club. Or Jesus gets on a boat, sails across the Sea of Galilee, and goes into an ISIS camp. Jesus is going to a place where few rabbis would ever dare tread. And when he gets there, there's transformation. Interesting. Next thing we need to do is unpack this idea of God. First of all, God and demon. So first of all, the word demon doesn't appear anywhere in the Old Testament. This is like a new invention from the New Testament writers. And in Greek, the word that we translate as demon actually doesn't mean fire-breathing, bat-tailed creature with screams from hell. It just means a force that is less than God. So Jesus encounters this man who is taken by forces that are less than God. Which of course brings up the inevitable question, do we have modern day demons? Of course the answer is yes. Right? The one modern day demon that is kind of easy to pin down is addiction. If you've ever been addicted to drugs or alcohol or sex or food, those are modern day demons. And they are powerful forces. They have the ability to control your life, control the lives of the people around you, but they are not the force of love, and so they are a force less than God. I might argue we have another demon that's quite popular in North America. It's the demon of capitalism. That is a force that is less powerful than God, but it still exerts a mighty amount of influence on this world. I might even suggest that the internet is a demon of sorts. It is powerful, it can control a lot of things, and it has a great influence if you've ever seen a 15-year-old with a smartphone. So do we have modern day demons that we need to get rid of? I would say yes. Now, in the text, I'm not sure if you picked up on this, but Jesus asks this man who is kneeling in front of him, "What is your name?" And the man's response, "Legion. My name is Legion." We don't know. Is this guy's name actually Ralph? Or is it Bob? Or is it Gary? We don't know. Because this man has allowed himself to be defined by his demons. We do this a lot. I think of when somebody gets out of jail. They are defined by their demons, not by their name. We call them a criminal. Or when somebody is an addict, we say they are an addict, not a person. Okay. Another interesting note. Now, if you've read the scripture and heard some of the stories, you know that sometimes Jesus will come up to a person and he will heal them or save them, and then he will say, don't go tell anyone what you've seen. Don't do it. Keep it to yourself. Now, often that person just runs away anyways and goes and tells everyone. But that's not what happens here, is it? Jesus sees the man, heals the man, and then is kicked out of the land. The man desperately wants to go with Jesus to wherever he's sailing to next. But Jesus says, no. Go back into your land and spread the light into that land. So what do we do with this story? If I were to summarize it, I would say love drives out demons. In the face of love, demons are driven out. Now, you and I, and we as a congregation, are called to be the face of Christ in the world. We are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus as it walks around Chemainus. So that means we should be driving out demons, which is kind of a strange thought. So let me share with you a story to finish off. A story of what I think love driving out demons looks like. In 1994, there was a man in Hamilton, Ontario, named Charlie, a pseudonym. And Charlie was about to get out of prison for the 4th time after having committed 20 sexual offenses. The prison system was completely helpless to do anything. His sentence was up, so they had to let him go. But everyone, the psychologists, the prison guards, everyone thought that there was a high chance that Charlie would go out and there would be more victims, often young children. Charlie had some friends in a Mennonite community. So they got together and they began to brainstorm. How might we change this cycle? So they thought about it, they prayed about it, they had meetings with a number of people, and they formed a circle of support and accountability. You see, people who have been in prison for any number of years have a problem when they get out, which is, where are you going to live? Where are you going to work? Where are your friends? And it's all too easy to fall into old patterns. It's much harder to develop new ones, especially with the stress of getting out, losing your community, and starting all over again. So they created this circle that would find an apartment for Charlie, that would make sure it had furniture, that he could begin applying for jobs. And they made themselves available 24/7. Anytime Charlie needed to call them, you could pick up the phone and they would come and accompany him. That group that started in Hamilton in 1994 is now a Canada-wide organization called Circles of Support and Accountability. The men and women who enter that program are 80% less likely to reoffend than other people who get out with similar crimes. So when we talk about driving out demons, I don't speak in some abstract spiritual warfare language. I speak in real language that has real consequences and real effects on this world. So, go be the face of love. Go drive out demons.